My dad practically gave me up to his sister from the moment I was born. My mom died when she was giving birth to me. And my aunt told me he never recovered from that because he blamed me for her dying. It hurt a lot as a kid that at family events he would ignore my existence. When I was a little older, he got more vocal about me killing her, and he can't stand to look at my face. You can imagine the amount of therapy that put me in. I used to go to church crying because I was scared about going to hell for doing that to my mom. That's how much his words me up. But the shitty part was that I never stopped trying to be accepted by him. After my high school graduation, he told me to never bother him again since he legally has no obligation to me anymore, since he was sending my aunt money to take care of me. Around that time is when I finally started accepting that reality, so from there we moved on with our lives. My aunt doesn't talk to me about him. Sometimes my grandparents do, and that's how I found out he got married. They were mad he didn't invite me to their wedding, but to me it didn't matter because we're not close. But it was his wife who wanted to meet me. It's the first time ever that he wants to make contact, and it was to pretty much say she wants me on their life. She doesn't know the real reason about why we're estranged. He asked me to please not say anything, and maybe this could be a way to reconcile after all. But he was only doing it for her. That much was clear when we talked. I never said I would be. He still insisted on us meeting at their place because she really wanted to meet me. All she thinks is we were estranged for not getting along in my teenager years, going to college and losing touch because of life stuff. It pissed me off that he played it off as us just not talking for petty reasons. Meanwhile, the actually reason damaged me for years. I told her the truth. Everything he said to me. That he was never a parent to me, that was all my aunt. It was definitely a shock for her. The outcome was a disaster. Everyone has heard about this now. My grandmas in particular told me she understands my anger. But this was his chance finding someone since losing my mom, and now it's been put in jeopardy. My dad is devastated. They think it was going too far to ruin his marriage that way when he was willing to include me in their lives, which could have been the start of our relationship. And they say not only did I ruin that, but also possibly wrecked his marriage. She just doesn't agree at all with what he did, and it could have been avoided if I didn't say anything. For me, it was hard not to tell the truth after the lies made it seem like it was nothing serious. I couldn't ignore what happened after what it did. If it was the right call, since it put their whole marriage at risk after all. I am a 19-year-old female. I have an estranged grandpa, more or less. He's my dad's father, but my dad hardly had a relationship with him. I have two other siblings, one younger and one older. My grandma divorced my grandpa when my dad was only 10. So he lived with my grandma his whole life in a different state and didn't see him. When he got older, he saw him a little more, and my grandpa started coming around a little bit more as well. He'd stay for a week at a time and then go home. He was an old, bitter man, to be honest. He never got remarried and lived his whole life in his coastal town with the same friends he'd had his whole life. He wasn't pleasant to be around and could hold grudges longer than anyone I've ever met. But regardless of this, he was filthy rich. He owned a successful business that he sold for $1 million. He retired after selling, but his house sits on an island as well as the biggest piece of land on the island. So it sold for well over $3 million. I was never close with my grandpa, but I took after his sister, who is in right now, and he adores her. He always told me that he was proud to see me follow in her footsteps. He died a few months ago. Since then, my family has been torn apart. He left everything to me. He essentially liquidated all of his assets, and it ended up being close to $8 million. I was shocked. I didn't and still don't know what to do with the money, but I'm going to save it. My dad and stepmom as well as my siblings are hounding me to split the money with them. I just can't do it. My dad is an alcoholic who never said anything nice about his dad. Despite him being bitter, my grandpa actually bought my dad a $300,000 house. My dad would 100% drink away any money given to him. As far as my siblings, my brother has full financial support from my grandma as he is the favorite, and he's very wasteful and ungrateful. He never talks to me and always is very mean to me when he does. My little sister is the only person I've actually considered. She's very young, and that's really the only thing stopping me. Her mom is money-oriented and would take the money from her. So I'm waiting until she turns 18, and I offered to pay for her college. But now my family is telling me I'm unfair and the money doesn't belong to me and I'm not deserving of it. That I'm too young and I'll waste it on cars and clothes. I don't agree, and now they're all threatening to cut me off and never speak to me. Or even sue me if I don't give them all a chunk of the money. I don't know what to do, and I'm buckling under pressure here. I've already had 2 police officers out to my house because my dad is claiming I stole the money from him. Everything was through an attorney. I know I did nothing wrong legally. But morally? Background: my grandparents have always been a big part of my life, as have the rest of my family. They had 5 children, including my father, and 13 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren. My grandparents are quite rich. They had 3 businesses until last year when my grandfather died. I am the child of my grandchildren and have always been very close to them. My grandma used to babysit me until I could go to kindergarten. I wrap Christmas presents for her every year. I decorate their house, and I worked at their bar on Fridays in college, no pay, as they are too old to do these things themselves. All this was offered to my cousins, but they never helped. My grandparents ran a show horse farm for over 40 years. It was what my father took with him and I quickly began to love. I used to go every weekend with my grandma up until high school when I started studying. Even though I don't ride horses anymore, my dad and I go to clean the stalls and look after the horses every week when my grandparents are away on trips. Usually once every 2 months. My grandparents were a huge part of my life. Problem: my grandmother died 4 weeks ago. It was devastating. My grandmother left my aunts, uncles, and dad about $85,000 each. Money for which she and my grandfather worked very, very hard. It was expected. What was not expected was that they would leave me just over $45,000 along with some other valuables. I was honestly shocked. All my cousins received about $2,000 each and a few trinkets. Obviously you can see where it was going. My aunts and uncles were at the reading when I was told, so they told their children. Everyone except the parents is furious. My cousins, who are already adults, demand that I divide them equally. I don't feel like I should. I was very close to my grandparents and did a lot for them, but it's hard. My family is very tight-knit and we have holidays / monthly parties / dinners / etc. together, every year. I never expected money to tear us apart. This money can change a lot for me. I could pay off my $10,000 student loan and put the rest into my upcoming wedding / future kids / savings account. A small part of me wants to share it equally, just to have everyone together. But there was a reason they left this to me. They didn't do it to hurt anyone. I was the only one who visited them and helped them. None of them took the time to see them, except for family gatherings. But no one understands this except my parents. It seems to me that I alone destroy the family. My aunts and uncles won't talk to my father until I split the money, and my cousins won't talk to me. I only have a student loan and a car payment, so I don't have much debt, but it could give me a comfortable future. They all keep throwing in my face that they have families, house payments, college to pay for, etc. They keep saying I've been planning this for a long time, but I really didn't. I loved my grandparents. My fiancé tells me to forget about them and do what's best for me, but I'm a big family man. I don't want to split the money, that could really help me, but I feel like they can play with me, forcing me to choose between them and this. My parents also want me to keep the money for myself, as they think my family members are being ridiculous in demanding it. Is it right for me to keep that much? I feel like I deserve it. Is it right for me to put this money on my family? Or are the people I've been so close to all my life taking advantage of me? $45,000 versus $2,000 is a huge difference. PS, there is more in the will than I explained. Houses, classic cars, horses, farm, land, CDs, etc. The cashback / checking accounts I was given is the only thing that seems to be a problem for everyone. I have inherited more money than my cousins. They demand that I divide it equally between them or never speak to them again. I am a 16-year-old female. I used to have a good relationship with my mother. That has since crashed and burned since she dated and married my stepdad, Gary, 6 years ago. Gary treats his son Ian, 19 male, like he's the center of the universe and expects my mother to as well, so she does. Anything Ian wants, Ian gets, and that usually comes at the expense of me. Ian wanted my room when they moved it. I was forced to go to another room to make the transition easier for everyone. Ian wanted a car for his 16th birthday. I didn't get braces for another year. Ian wanted to go on an expensive trip for spring break. I had to give up volleyball to make it happen. Ian wanted to have his side of the family over. I was expected to find somewhere else to be, since I wasn't family. My mother just went along with all of this and acted like it shouldn't affect me at all. My dad was overseas for a long time, and we used to FaceTime, and he was so upset by what he was hearing. He's home now and he's offering to have me come live with him. I'm not seeing a reason not to go, and so I told my mom I wanted to go live with my dad. She predictably freaked out and asked why I'd want to do that and said that we had such a good relationship. She didn't understand how this came so out of the blue. I told her that we haven't had a good relationship since she blindly decided to follow Gary's lead and give Ian anything he wanted, and it always came at my expense. My mom tried to argue, so I said I also wanted to leave because she let them kick me out of my own house because I wasn't family. So I was going to go live with someone who was. My mom started crying and said she wouldn't let me go. So I told her that my dad was willing to go to court over it and I was old enough to be able to say where I wanted to be. She's been a crying mess since I told her, and Gary is being a jackass about how awful I'm being. He was. ING at me about how terribly I'm treating them and how I'm not thinking about them at all. I asked why should I. He never thought of me when he was taking things from me to give to his kid. I said let's face facts here, you don't care about me, what you care about is losing the child support you spend on your son. He sort of went slack-jawed and I walked off. My dad said my mom called and threatened to take him to court, so he said he'd see her there. Now she's panicking because she realized he is planning on taking her to court over this. Mom and Gary of course think I'm the asshole for making things hard for everyone. But my dad and grandparents say to leave and never look back.